Okay.
Now, Greg, I like exclusives and I like scoops, but this was an unfortunate scoop that I got yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yesterday, I learned from multiple reliable sources that there were significant layoffs at Sony Santa Monica, the studio best known for God of War. It appears that as many as 50 or 60 people were let go, and one of the games the studio was working on seems to have been canceled. Sony confirmed to me that this was indeed true, at least the layoffs part, not the cancellation of the title part.
Sure.
Saying that they, quote, completed a reduction in workforce, end quote, at Santa Monica as part of a, quote, cycle of resource alignment against priority growth areas within Sony Computer Entertainment's worldwide studios.
Duh!
End
Anyone
quote.
can wrap their head around that.
I don't know what that means. Our very best goes out to all those affected. They will all land on their feet, I'm sure, because Santa Monica is very talented.
You have a lot of questions here from the Beyond mailbag. Of course, Beyond at IGN.com if you want to be part of this show. Let's start with Kevin. Kevin says, hey, Beyond crew.
Hello.
Just wanted to get your take on the SSM layoffs. I find it strange due to the fact that they were hiring 1 week prior and that they were set to move into a much larger office over the summer, expanding the studio. Also, what game do you think got canned? Space game or new God of War? Or could there have been a mysterious third game in development?
So I don't know what game got canceled. Keep in mind that none of their games have been announced. So everything that people know about what they're working on is pretty much conjecture at this point.
Right, but when he's talking about the space game, this was news for a long time that the Battlestar dude writer showed up and was doing that. And then God of War, you assume they've been working on. There's been hints at that.
Right. So all right. So we know that let's just do a little math, right?
Let's do it.
We know that.
You know I love math.
We know that. Well, I know you're very good at math.
Yep.
You almost became a mathematician. I heard.
Did. What kept me out of it was I kept eating the abacus.
Yeah. You're very hungry. You're very hungry.
I don't understand what you just said.
Abacuses.
Abaci?
Abacus. Yeah, well, I know what an abacus is. I just want to eat one.
Well, we had the special. I went to a poor school where we used olive on strings. We put little olives on strings and moved them around. I was just a poor boy.
That's what I get for asking.
Raised in southern Georgia.
So the space game has been in development for a couple of years or a few years. The God of War team finished Ascension last year, and then we're working on DLC. So they were probably in pre-production with the new God of War game if they're working on a God of War game. Therefore, you assume that the game that was not far along was the one that was canceled.
Right.
So I still think that the space game, whatever that is their new IP is what they're going to be focusing on. Let's keep in mind that God of War Ascension sales were very, very soft.
Super weak.
So God of War 3, for instance, sold almost 6 million copies, I think, on an install base of 40 million PS3s, and then by the time there were 65 million PS3s out there, God of War Ascension sold maybe 2 million. So the move to multiplayer was a bad idea.
You got to take those shots sometimes.
Yeah,
Nobody was asking for it, but you got to swing at the fences.
What about the fact that they were hiring just a few days before that he mentioned? So what do you think that is?
Yeah, so they're still hiring. And I think that a lot of it has to do, you need an infusion of new blood, different kinds of talent. Let's assume that they were working on God of War and that they canceled it. This is a third-person action game, right? Some of the people that have been working on that game have probably been there for a long time.
Right.
Let's say they don't want to do that anymore, and they need someone that does an RPG. They're doing maybe an open world RPG now. I'm just making that up. Don't write that anywhere.
Okay.
I mean,
N4G has the sense that Colin Moriarty's got the scoop.
So then they need people that specialize in open world RPGs. Like you can't, it's just like being like the artists might be able to work on different kinds of games and the programmers and all these kinds of things, but certainly there are specializations,
right?
And so they might still be hiring for games that just don't line up with what they were working on and canceled. And I also think that this was probably not planned until a little while ago because it doesn't make any sense.
It's always one of those things when we hear layoffs, I think people jump to the conclusion that they're suffering, the business is suffering, numbers are down, yada yada yada, and so they'd cancel open recs and yada. That's not really the case, right? Irrational is a great example of they laid a whole bunch of people off, but they're still making games, they're still going forward. This isn't that they're out of business; they just are changing their focus. And a sad part of business is that when you do that, you have to get rid of people. Who
while we're talking about that, then earlier you said you're sure they'll land on their feet, most of these folks, because of their talent. Looking at their skill sets and looking at what's out there, what would be a good place for people who specialize in what these guys do?
I mean, you think about a company, and they're not going to do any more of these Castlevania games, but I just reviewed Castlevania and Mercury Steam's in Spain, but there are studios that are doing Castlevania is God of War. I mean, the Lords of Shadow is God of War.
Right.
So there are places that are going to be doing these kinds of games still. You think about places like Ninja Theory or like studios that traditionally, with Heavenly Sword and DMC, like traditionally are in that space. But they don't have to end up at those kinds of places either. I just think that having Sony Santa Monica on your resume is going to be very, very powerful.
Absolutely, yeah.
John from Columbia, Missouri writes in on this topic. He says, I recently read that Sony Santa Monica laid off a number of their staff. With the layoffs, recent ones at Irrational, this has been hitting the news a lot lately. Do you think this is indicative of anything in the gaming industry, or are these groups of layoffs coincidentally hitting at the same time? this is something we talk about all the time, right? Right now, this is my thing. I was accused of being cold about the irrational layoffs and a little unfeeling, but right now it's the nature of the video game business. You build up this huge team, you ramp up to make this game, you make the game, people start to leave for other projects, you keep people around for DLC, and then you lay a whole bunch of people off because you don't need them at that point. It's this weird reciprocal relationship that everybody's in the industry, and that's why I think people are going to land on their feet, right? Is that there's another game gearing up that can use these people, but you're looking at studios doing this more and more. I think that's the easiest way to do it. But another thing he says is, it coincidence it's happening right now. This is funny because we had Clements on last week. He was here, and he was talking about, like, it's been a year since he was laid off from IGN, almost to the day. They keep happening right around this time period because why, Colin?
It's fiscal year.
Fiscal year is closing out. People have to balance their budgets, make sense of next year's budgets, figure out how they allocate the money and resources they have.
Right. It's never easy, and it sucks that there's not more stability even at AAA developers. There are AAA developers that are very stable, i.e. Rockstar, or Naughty Dog, but where you don't hear about layoffs ever. But people like to cherry pick things and say, like, well, these guys are getting laid off, and this is happening to this studio, and this studio shut down, and this game didn't sell well, and therefore the AAA industry or the console industry or whatever is failing. But or it's in trouble. But I just don't think that's the case.
No, not at all.
Like Grand Theft Auto, as I was talking to someone recently about GTA 5, is the best-selling and highest-grossing entertainment product ever. You know, like it's not even a question of how. And look at all the Call of Duty games that just are ridiculous. Like there's an appetite for these games. It's just that you have to hit or you don't. And God of War Ascension didn't hit.
This is not indicative of there being a lack of finance in the industry. I do think it might be indicative of a culture that's continuing to grow that worries me a little bit.
Sure,
it has nothing to do with the fact that companies aren't going to make money or people aren't going to keep making great games. But there are enough people out there that want to do this for a living. I mean, you're a developer. You sit there and go, I want to make great games for a living. There's a lot of those folks out there. Companies can, kind of unfortunately, afford to do this a lot.
I want you to put a quick pin in this because I think you're going somewhere Ryan asks about. Remember, beyond at IGN.com if you want to be part of the show. Ryan says it's becoming alarmingly common for studios to lay employees off now. Their hours are already hard, their stress level is high, and now it's becoming harder financially to support these studios. What can the average gamer do to help?
Oh, wow, there's a great question.
I think you're hitting on it right there when you're talking about the fact God of War didn't sell well, and now you're seeing it. Maybe we don't know, but you assume people who were working on that project released because now they're redistributing their efforts down to something else. Maybe not a third-person game. Buy the games you want to buy. We always talk about voting with your wallet. Vote with your wallet. Don't buy used. Don't wait for a sale.
I mean, buy used, right? If you want to buy used, but understand what you're doing. When you do that. And it's not to say that I never bought used games or used 100%. Games aren't important or that ecosystem's not important, especially because it helps propagate old games that are out of print, right? And it's your right, it's absolutely your right to buy a used game if you want to, but that used game money is not going to the developers and the publishers. So if you really do want this industry to thrive, then you have to think about, is it worth saving that extra money at the sake of the health of a company, and that's really up to you. I can't tell you what to do.
There's something else you can do, too. In addition to voting with your wallet, you can calm down. I'm not talking to our reader here, not the guy who wrote the letter. He seems like a very articulate fellow.
Calm the hell down, Ryan.
But yeah, I mean, studios, particularly the business end of things, can be quite reactionary. Calm down. Engage the studios not with screaming and yelling on Twitter, but with dialogue, with real questions, with support. Be patient. Be patient with delays. Understanding that people are making those delays so the game will be better. If audiences calm down, they can create a culture in the industry that's just slightly less frantic, and every little bit helps. And enough people calm down, there might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys that get to keep their jobs.
I mean, I don't think it's a surprise what you've seen, right? Twisted Metal comes out and doesn't sell. David Jaffe says, I'm leaving this and trying mobile games. I'm going to try to make different experiences. BioShock comes out, prays really well, sells well, doesn't sell enough to be a hit for what they were looking for the years and years of development, but is praised for its story. So Ken Levine looks and says, I'm going to make more story-driven games that are smaller so he can get them out quicker, so he can deliver a little bit best. I mean, look at Gone Home, right? Like the Gone Home team are people who made Minerva's Den. They went off, did their own thing, they got it out the door, and they were lauded. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, their game's the talk of the town. It's up for Game of the Year consideration in places. Like, they want to be part of this conversation. So going out and making a Twisted Metal you believe in may not be the best business plan.
And one final thing you can do to help is evangelize. Not only buy the games yourself, but go out there and encourage other people to buy them. As much, we have big microphones in front of us, but we aren't the people who really sell games. You guys out there right now are the ones who get games sold. You tell your friends about them. You say, go out and get this. They're going to listen to you, not to us. That really matters. So go out and evangelize.
God knows I've evangelized for Calling All Cars 2, and I'm never going to get it.
Yeah. And the last guy. And I think that a lot of these problems will take care of themselves. the industry will inevitably go digital only. That is going to happen. That is absolutely going to happen. Maybe not in the next 5 years, but it will happen. And then you won't have the option to buy used games anymore. Just like you don't have the option to buy used games on Steam.
Right, and nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly. And then this will create parity within development cycles as well, because when you can cut the middleman out, GameStop, right? When you can cut Amazon out, all these places, then prices are going to have to go down because there's no one taking a cut from that. There's no truck to drive it to the store. There's no gas to put in the truck. There's no airfare. There's no manufacturer of discs and boxes and instruction manuals. There's no person at the store having to sell it. Like once you it will bring costs down. Games will become cheaper. Games are already cheaper than they've ever been.
Oh, absolutely.
And games will, and I want to reiterate that because some people don't believe it, so I'm going to say it again. Games are cheaper than they've ever been.
That wonderful article you wrote last year. I mean, absolutely spectacular.
But they will be cheaper. They will get even cheaper. And the AAA games will even be cheaper. And a lot of this, Greg, I think, too, and you may disagree or agree, is that
with you? Never.
Is that development costs are just too high for AAA games, and expectations are too high. I mean, when a game sells 4 or 5 million copies, that should be a bona fide hit. Not everything should sell like Grand Theft Auto 5.
Right,
right. By the way, I'm reading about it right now because I want to make sure I was right about the sales records. Grand Theft Auto 5 made $800 million in one day.
Yeah.
It's just
we always talk about production timelines and schedules and sticking to them, right? And we always joke about Last Guardian, how it's gone on, and in that time, Naughty Dog was able to make all the Uncharted and Last of Us, right? Naughty Dog has a great pipeline. Every 2 years, here's a great game that we really tried, and maybe it's not a 40-hour RPG or something. It's something that we really produce and believe in, and it sells enough to keep the studio going to make the other game and make them a profit and make Sony care about them.
Isn't it amazing how these well-managed studios that manage to retain their staffs keep making great games over and over and over again? That's another part. I mean, we're kind of letting the business end of things off the hook here a little. I mean, and I understand free market economics is going to rear its head and do its thing, but the studios that keep their teams tend to consistently produce good content. I really hope we don't see too many more layoffs. I know we're going to, but maybe somebody's eventually going to figure out that, hey, if we just keep these guys around, we can make better stuff.